Hi, and welcome back to David Pattinson's Accused Friends. Today I wanted to answer the question of why Sweden is still open for business, whereas the UK is locked down. And I suppose the simple answer is that the UK is experimenting with tyranny and Sweden aren't. But in relation to the current health crisis, I wanted to provide some context on the numbers that I think you might find interesting. And these are all numbers to do with the virus that I've gleaned from the website worldometers.info, and I'll put the link in the description. Looks like a lot of people are looking at this website and tracking the daily deaths. And what's interesting, of course, about Sweden is that they don't have a lockdown. And, you know, when I tell people this, they say, well, they must have, deaths, everywhere, and there must be people dying, everywhere you look. And, the reality is that they're experiencing, deaths, 50% less than we are. And, obviously someone needs to ask the question as to why. So they do have some restrictions in place in Sweden. Schools and shops are open, bars and restaurants are open. I understand in restaurants there's a little bit of segregated seating where people have to sit a little way apart from each other, and gatherings of 50 or more than 50 are not permitted, but less than 50 are fine. And, big photos in Stockholm have shown people wandering around kind of as normal. So statistic-wise, I just want to point out a few things for you. On March the 21st is where I'm going to start. Now, the population of Sweden is about 10.5 million. In Britain, it's 65 million or so. So I'm adding a multiplier of 6.5 to all of Sweden's death statistics to try and get them in line with ours, accounting for population size. So what I've done on March 21st, according to the Worldometers figures, I'm showing Sweden with 98 deaths, which is approximately 100, and that's by multiplying their actual deaths by 6.5. On the same day, we're at 56, so they're double ours on that day. And a couple of days later is when Britain started the lockdown. And so you're thinking, okay, well, Sweden are twice what ours are at this particular time period. And so no doubt, they're going to continue to escalate, and we're going to start to level off because of the lockdown. So 10 days later, on April 1st, I'm showing Sweden at 384 deaths with the multiplier. We're at 563. So, we're a couple of hundred more than them on that particular day, but it's only 10 days or so into the lockdown. So no doubt the UK is going to be catching up. By April 10th, however, that's sort of coming on for 3 weeks into the lockdown. So I've got Sweden at 500, UK is at 980. So UK is almost double Sweden now with the lockdown. And then April 16th, which is today, it's the day I'm doing this video. Sweden, I've got at 845 with the multiplier. And UK, I've got at 861. So UK is still ahead. The total numbers through the 26 days that I've started doing this since March 21st. I've got Sweden at basically 8,700 deaths with the multiplier, and then I've got UK at 13,700. So UK has 5,000 more deaths than Sweden over the point of the lockdown. And so people want to know, well, David, why are you talking about this? Why are you trying to put UK in a bad light versus Sweden? As a British patriot, the last thing I'd ever want to do is come on camera and talk about how great Sweden is really in relation to us. But the point is, this whole lockdown was predicated on the fact that we're going to be saving lives. But of course, we're costing ourselves more lives than Sweden are without a lockdown. We talk a lot about how great our NHS is, but what about their NHS? They're getting twice the results that we are for an absolute fraction of the cost, because you've got to look at these numbers in relation to what's the cost of the lockdown, what's the cost of crashing our economy, what's the cost to people's lives who lose their lives not as a result of the virus, but as a result of the lockdown, through depression, through unemployment, through suicide, through drug overdose, through lower living standards. Why do we not have to, count all those? I mean, these numbers I've got for UK, disregarding the fact that there's been news stories how the UK numbers are, are underrepresented because of these care home deaths and all this sort of stuff. So these numbers, you don't really know. But what is pretty obvious is that Sweden has not been adversely affected by staying open. And they're actually getting better results than we are by being locked down. And so when we start calculating all the lockdown deaths, Sweden's not going to have to worry about those the impact of those on their numbers because they haven't been locked down. Their economy has slowed slightly, but it hasn't crashed through the floor like ours is going to do. And the UK's economic impact for a long period of time and our debt is going to be hugely detrimental to our living standards, whereas Sweden's is not. So I do think we need to ask the question, why does Sweden get away with not being locked down, whereas we do? And, surely someone in our government needs to fly over there to Sweden to investigate how they're doing so much better, how they're getting so much better results than we are through this lockdown. Liberty is such an important thing for me, and I've talked about it in these videos. And once you give up your liberty, in exchange for security, you end up losing both. And the big tragedy of this whole series of events for me is that the British people have given up their liberty. They've given it up way too easily. And, it's time we took it back from the government. So I hope you like this video, and we'll talk to you soon.